What happens when a beloved Southern comedian gets pushed too far on live television? The answer involves one of the most shocking moments in late-night history, and it all started so innocently. Before we get into this wild story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think about what went down. Trust me, you are going to want to hear how this unfolds. Leanne Morgan walked onto the set of The Tonight Show to massive applause. The audience was packed with fans who had been following her comedy career for years, and the energy in the room was electric. Jimmy Fallon greeted her with his trademark enthusiasm, arms spread wide as she made her way to the guest chair. "Leanne Morgan, everybody," Jimmy said, clapping along with the audience. "It is so good to have you here. I have been watching your specials, and I have got to say, you are one of the funniest people working today." Leanne smiled warmly, settling into her seat. "Well, thank you, Jimmy. That is sweet of you to say. I am just happy to be here." "So, your new tour is selling out everywhere," Jimmy continued, leaning forward. "What is it like going from performing in small comedy clubs to these massive theaters?" Leanne laughed. It is surreal. I remember doing shows where there were maybe 12 people in the audience, and half of them were related to me. Now I walk out and there are thousands of people, and I keep thinking, did y'all mean to buy tickets to my show, or is there some mix-up? The audience laughed, and Jimmy grinned. "That is amazing, though. And your comedy, it is so relatable. You talk about marriage, kids, getting older. Where does all that material come from?" "Well, I have been married for over 30 years, Leanne said. "I have got 3 kids, and let me tell you, they give me plenty of material. My husband, he is the most patient man on the planet. He has to be living with me." Jimmy nodded enthusiastically. "I love that. And you are from Tennessee, right? Small town." "Yes, sir. Born and raised. Population about 2,000 people. And that is counting the dogs." The audience chuckled, and Jimmy seemed to be enjoying the conversation. But then something shifted. His tone changed slightly, becoming more probing. "So, Leanne, I have got to ask," Jimmy said, and there was something in his voice that made Leanne sit up a little straighter. "Your comedy is very wholesome, very family-friendly. Do you ever feel like you are limiting yourself by staying in that lane? I mean, some of the biggest comedians out there, they push boundaries, they go dark. Do you ever think about doing that?" Leanne's smile flickered for just a moment. "Well, Jimmy, I do not think I am limiting myself at all. I am telling stories that are true to who I am. That is what connects with people. They see themselves in my stories." Right, Jimmy said. But he did not seem satisfied with the answer. "But do not you think comedy is about pushing buttons, making people uncomfortable sometimes?" "I think comedy is about making people laugh," Leanne responded, her southern accent becoming a touch more pronounced. "And there are a million ways to do that. I do not need to curse or shock people to get a laugh. My life is funny enough as it is." Jimmy leaned back, a strange smile on his face. "Okay, but be honest. Do you think clean comedy is as respected as edgier comedy? Because I feel like when people think of the greats, they think of people who took risks, who said things that made people gasp." The audience had gone quieter now, sensing the shift in energy. Leanne's expression hardened slightly. "Jimmy, I have sold out Radio City Music Hall," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I have got Netflix specials that millions of people have watched. I think I am doing just fine without needing to make people gasp. Respect comes from connecting with your audience, not from trying to prove how edgy you can be." Sure, Jimmy said, holding up his hands. "I am just saying there is a difference between being funny and being safe, right? And maybe your comedy is a little too safe." The room went completely silent. Leanne stared at Jimmy for a long moment, and you could see the wheels turning in her head. The smile had vanished from her face entirely. "Too safe," she repeated slowly. "Jimmy, are you seriously sitting here telling me that my comedy is too safe?" "I am just asking a question," Jimmy said. But his voice had lost some of its confidence. "I mean, you have to admit you play it pretty safe up there." Leanne leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "Let me tell you something about safe, Jimmy. I have spent years perfecting my craft. I have worked rooms where people did not want to laugh, where they sat there with their arms crossed, waiting for me to fail. And I won them over every single time. Not by being shocking, but by being real. So do not sit there and tell me I am playing it safe when you do not know the first thing about what it takes to do what I do." Jimmy shifted uncomfortably. "Okay, I think maybe we are getting a little off track here." "No, I think we are right on track," Leanne shot back. "You brought this up. You wanted to have this conversation, so let us have it." Jimmy tried to laugh it off, but the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The band members were exchanging glances, and the audience sat frozen, unsure if this was part of some elaborate bit or if they were witnessing an actual argument unfold in real time. "Look, Leanne," Jimmy said, attempting to regain control of the interview. "I did not mean to offend you. I am just saying that in comedy, sometimes you have to take risks to stay relevant. The landscape is changing. Audiences want different things now." Leanne's eyebrows shot up. "Stay relevant, Jimmy? My last special came out 6 months ago, and it is still in the top 10 on Netflix. I have got a tour that is adding dates because of demand. What part of that sounds irrelevant to you?" "That is not what I am saying," Jimmy protested, his smile looking more forced by the second. "I am talking about artistic growth, evolution. Like, do you ever challenge yourself to go outside your comfort zone?" "My comfort zone," Leanne repeated, and there was an edge to her voice now that made even Jimmy flinch slightly. "You think talking about real life, about being a wife and a mother and getting older in a world that does not value women over a certain age, you think that is a comfort zone? You think that is easy?" Jimmy opened his mouth to respond, but Leanne was not finished. "Let me tell you what is actually safe, Jimmy. Safe is sitting behind this desk every night with a team of writers handing you jokes. Safe is doing the same monologue format that has been done for 60 years. Safe is never having to stand on a stage by yourself with nothing but a microphone and your own material, wondering if people are going to laugh or just stare at you." The audience was completely silent now. Some people in the front row had their hands over their mouths. This was not going the way anyone expected. Jimmy's face had turned red. "Okay, I think that is a little unfair. I work very hard on this show." "I am sure you do," Leanne said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But do not come at me talking about playing it safe when you have never had to do what I do. Stand-up comedy is not safe. It is terrifying every single night." All right, Jimmy said, trying to steer the conversation anywhere else. "Let us talk about something else. Your family. Tell us about your kids." But Leanne was not letting him off the hook that easily. "No, Jimmy, you started this conversation. You wanted to talk about my comedy not being edgy enough. So let us finish it." Jimmy looked desperately at his producer off stage, but there was no rescue coming. He was stuck. "I just think," he said carefully, "that maybe you are limiting your audience by keeping things so wholesome. There are people who might not give your comedy a chance because they think it is going to be all sunshine and rainbows." Leanne laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sunshine and rainbows. Jimmy, have you actually watched any of my specials, or are you just going off whatever your staff told you in the pre-in?" Jimmy's silence was answer enough. "That is what I thought," Leanne said, shaking her head. "You know what is really going on here? You do not respect what I do. You think because I do not drop F-bombs every other sentence, because I do not talk about sex and drugs, that somehow my comedy is lesser, that it is easy, that it does not count. That is not true," Jimmy insisted. But his voice lacked conviction. "It absolutely is true," Leanne fired back. "And you know what the worst part is? I expected this from some people, but I thought you of all people would understand. You built your career on being likable, on being the nice guy, and now you are sitting here trying to tear me down for doing the exact same thing." Jimmy's jaw tightened. "I am not trying to tear you down, Leanne. I am trying to have a conversation." "No, you are trying to make yourself look edgy by making me look soft," Leanne said, her voice rising slightly. "You are trying to show your audience that you can ask the tough questions, that you are not just some softball interviewer, but you picked the wrong person to try that with." The audience was completely transfixed. Some people were filming on their phones despite the no recording policy. This was the kind of television moment that people would be talking about for years. "I think we should take a break," Jimmy suggested weakly. "Oh, now you want to take a break," Leanne said. "Now that you have realized you stepped in it." "No, Jimmy. You wanted to have this conversation on your show in front of your audience. So, we are going to finish it right here." Jimmy looked like he wanted to sink into his chair and disappear. "Leanne, I apologize if I upset you. That was not my intention. Your intention was to make me look like some small-time comedian who does not understand real comedy," Leanne said. "And I am telling you right now that is not who I am. I have earned every single thing I have gotten in this career. I have worked harder than you can possibly imagine. And I do not need your approval or anyone else's to know that what I do matters." "I never said it did not matter," Jimmy tried to interject. "But you implied it," Leanne cut him off. "When you ask if my comedy is too safe, when you suggest I need to push boundaries to be taken seriously, you are implying that what I do right now is not enough, that I am not enough. Jimmy looked genuinely rattled now. He had hosted hundreds of interviews, navigated countless awkward moments, but this was different. Leanne was not backing down, and the audience could feel the authenticity of her anger. Leanne, I think you are misunderstanding what I was trying to say, Jimmy attempted, his voice quieter now. I have a lot of respect for you. I really do. Do you, though? Leanne asked, tilting her head. Because respect means you do your homework. Respect means you do not invite someone on your show just to belittle their work. Respect means you recognize that there are different kinds of comedy, and they are all valid. Jimmy nodded quickly. You are right. You are absolutely right. I should have prepared better. I should have watched your specials. Yes, you should have, Leanne agreed. But it is bigger than that, Jimmy. This is about how women in comedy get treated. We get asked different questions than men do. We get judged by different standards. And I am tired of it. The audience murmured in agreement. Several women were nodding their heads emphatically. When a male comedian talks about his family, about everyday life, he is considered observational and brilliant. Leanne continued, her passion evident. But when a woman does it, she is playing it safe. She is not edgy enough. Do you see the double standard there? Jimmy shifted in his seat. I hear what you are saying. Do you? Leanne pressed. Because I have been hearing it my entire career. I have had people tell me I need to be more like this comedian or that comedian. I need to be dirtier. I need to be meaner. I need to be anything other than what I am. And I spent years trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Why my natural voice was not good enough. Her voice cracked slightly with emotion, and the audience was hanging on every word. And then I realized, she continued, there is nothing wrong with me. There is something wrong with a system that tells women they have to be something they are not to be successful. That tells us our experiences are not interesting enough, not important enough, not funny enough. Jimmy looked down at his desk. I never thought about it that way. Most people do not, Leanne said. That is the problem. These biases are so ingrained that people do not even realize they have them. You probably thought you were asking a legitimate question about artistic growth. But what you were really doing was questioning my entire approach to comedy, my entire identity as a performer. The audience began to applaud slowly at first, then building to a crescendo. Leanne acknowledged them with a small nod, but her focus remained on Jimmy. I came on this show tonight excited to talk about my tour, to share some funny stories, to connect with your audience, Leanne said, her voice steady but firm. Instead, I got ambushed with questions designed to make me defend my choices, my style, my entire career. That is not okay, Jimmy. You are right, Jimmy said. And for the first time, he sounded genuinely remorseful. I completely messed this up. I am sorry. Are you sorry you did it, or are you sorry you got called out on it? Leanne asked pointedly. Jimmy paused, considering the question carefully. I am sorry I did it, truly. I let my own preconceptions cloud my judgment, and I disrespected you in the process. That was wrong. Leanne studied his face for a long moment, trying to determine if the apology was genuine. The silence stretched out uncomfortably. Here is what bothers me most, Leanne finally said. I bet you have had male comedians on this show who do clean comedy. I bet you did not ask them if they were playing it safe. I bet you did not question whether they were limiting themselves. Jimmy opened his mouth, then closed it again. He could not argue with that because she was right. Jim Gaffigan, Leanne said, naming a fellow comedian. Brian Regan, Jerry Seinfeld, all brilliant comedians who keep their material relatively clean. Did you ever ask them if they were being too safe? No, Jimmy admitted quietly. I did not, because they are men, Leanne stated simply. And men get the benefit of the doubt. Men get to be themselves without constantly having to justify their choices. The audience was absolutely riveted. This had gone from a standard late-night interview to a master class in calling out industry sexism. I am not trying to destroy you here, Jimmy, Leanne said, her tone softening slightly. I am trying to make you understand what it is like to be a woman in this business. Every single day we have to prove ourselves in ways that men do not. We have to be twice as good to get half the recognition, and we have to do it all while people question whether we are doing it right. Jimmy nodded slowly. I understand, or at least I am beginning to understand, and I am genuinely sorry for my part in perpetuating that. I appreciate that, Leanne said. But an apology is not enough. Actions matter. How you treat the next female comedian who sits in this chair matters. Whether you do your homework, whether you ask respectful questions, whether you see her as an equal. That is what matters. I hear you, Jimmy said. And I will do better. Leanne looked at him for another long moment, then glanced out at the audience. You could see her weighing something in her mind, making a decision. You know what, Jimmy? Leanne said, standing up from her chair. I appreciate your apology. I really do, but I do not think I can sit here anymore. The audience gasped collectively. Jimmy's eyes went wide. Leanne, please, Jimmy said, standing up as well. Do not leave. Let us finish this conversation. We did finish it, Leanne said, removing her microphone. I said what I needed to say. You heard me. But I am not going to sit here and pretend everything is fine now, just because you apologized. That is not how this works. Jimmy looked panicked. His producers were frantically gesturing from offstage, but there was nothing they could do. This was happening live. I respect your work. I really do, Jimmy said desperately. Please stay. We can talk about your tour, about anything you want. Leanne paused, her hand on the microphone pack clipped to her waist. Jimmy, the damage is done. You invited me here under the pretense of a normal interview, and instead you question my credibility as a comedian. You do not get to just move past that like it did not happen. But we can make this right, Jimmy insisted. We can have a real conversation now, an honest one. We just had an honest conversation, Leanne replied. And honestly, I do not want to be here anymore. I do not want to sit here and promote my tour on a show where the host did not even bother to watch my work before I arrived. That is not respect. That is not how you treat a guest. The audience was completely silent, watching this unfold like a car crash they could not look away from. Some people had tears in their eyes, moved by Leanne's words. I have been in this business for a long time, Leanne continued, her voice strong and clear. And I have learned that you have to stand up for yourself. You have to draw lines. And my line is that I will not be disrespected. Not even on national television. Not even when it might hurt my career to walk away. Jimmy looked devastated. Leanne, I am begging you. Do not leave like this. Why not? Leanne asked, turning to face him fully. Because it makes you look bad? Because people will talk about this? Jimmy, maybe they should talk about this. Maybe people need to see what happens when you disrespect someone, and there are actual consequences. It is not about me looking bad, Jimmy said, though his voice suggested otherwise. It is about giving you a chance to share your work with this audience. They came here wanting to hear from you. Leanne looked out at the audience, and her expression softened slightly. I appreciate every single one of you who came here tonight, and I am sorry that this interview did not go the way any of us expected. But I hope you understand why I cannot stay. Several audience members started applauding, and soon the entire room was clapping and cheering for her. It was a surreal moment. An audience applauding a guest for walking off a show. Jimmy stood there looking lost. This is not how I wanted this to go. Then you should have prepared differently, Leanne said simply. You should have done the work. You should have respected me enough to actually watch my comedy before you criticized it. She finished removing her microphone and handed it to a nearby stagehand. The band was frozen, unsure what to do. The cameras kept rolling. Can I say one more thing? Leanne asked, turning back to Jimmy. Of course, he said quickly, hoping maybe she had changed her mind. To any young comedian watching this, especially young women, Leanne said, looking directly into the camera. Do not ever let anyone make you feel like your voice does not matter. Do not let anyone tell you that you need to be someone you are not to be successful. Stay true to yourself. Tell your stories your way. And if someone disrespects you, you have every right to walk away. The audience erupted in applause again. Many people on their feet now. And Jimmy, Leanne said, turning back to him one last time. I hope you learn from this. I hope the next time you have a female comedian on your show, you treat her the way she deserves to be treated, with respect, with preparation, and with an understanding that her comedy is just as valid as anyone else's. I will, Jimmy said, his voice barely audible. I promise I will. Leanne nodded once, then turned and walked off the stage. The audience continued clapping as she disappeared behind the curtain. Jimmy stood there alone, looking shell-shocked before finally sitting back down at his desk. We are going to take a break, he said weakly into the camera, and the show cut to commercial. But the damage was done. Within minutes, clips of the interview were spreading across social media. People were picking sides, debating who was right and who was wrong. Some defended Jimmy, saying Leanne overreacted. Others praised her for standing up for herself and calling out the double standards women face in comedy. Leanne's tour dates started selling out even faster after the incident. Her social media following exploded overnight. People who had never heard of her before were now seeking out her specials, wanting to see what all the fuss was about. And when they watched her comedy, they understood. They understood that she was not playing it safe at all. She was being brave in a way that too many people failed to recognize. The interview became a watershed moment, not just for Leanne, but for conversations about how women in comedy are treated. Other female comedians started sharing their own experiences of being questioned, doubted, and disrespected in ways their male counterparts never were. And through it all, Leanne kept doing what she did best. She kept telling her stories, making people laugh, and proving that you do not have to compromise who you are to be successful. You just have to be brave enough to walk away when someone tries to make you feel less than. So, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Do you think Leanne was right to walk off, or should she have stayed and finished the interview? Let us know what you think.